Hello and welcome to the Week 7 edition of the Survivor Breakdown. And if you're watching this, hello all 8 of you that are still left in Survivor pools out there, because it has been absolute carnage through the first 6 weeks of the season. I was out last week, not because I was crying at home. I was at G2E, the Global Gaming Expo here in town. But have you know, I did get bounced. I played the Jags in week 5. And so that was the end of yours truly. And then of course we had another big, massive carnage weekend this week. So Steven, here we go. As we move into this, by the way, Matt Brown, Steven Anders, if you want to follow us on the Twitter machine at Steven Anders 1, at Matt Brown M2. And of course, hit that subscribe button down below. Thanks for stopping by. We are now looking at Cincinnati as a 6-point favorite. The Cowboys as a 7-point favorite. Green Bay's getting a little dicey, but they're 5.5-point favorites on the road at the Commanders. The Bucs, massive double-digit favorites against the Panthers. You got the Ravens as 6.5-point favorites over the Browns. The Raiders are a full touchdown over the Texans. The Chargers are 6.5 over the Seahawks. And then we get the Dolphins and Patriots to kind of round things out as big favorites, as the Dolphins sitting as 7-point favorites at home against the Steelers. And then the Patriots as 8-point favorites against the Bears. And so if we look down here, what are the early kind of predictions here anyway? Of course, guys, this all can change. Injury news will come out throughout the course of the week and people might pivot off of these plays. But what are we looking at as far as like what is likely to be the most popular choices?
Well, if you're looking at the ESPN Survivor pool, which is nationwide, started with more than 500,000 entries, and we're down to less than 3% of the remaining entries. We are looking at early in the week, the Raiders being the most popular choice at 28%, which is pretty hefty. And then after that, we're looking at the Bucs at double digits, close to 20%. And then after that, it would be the Bengals rounding out the top 3 most popular picks for week number 7. And if this year is any indication, 2 of those teams are going to lose.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense, because if you're looking at this Raiders squad, I mean, I imagine the reasoning here, Steven, is, hey, look, when the hell else am I going to use this team, right? I mean, it's kind of like, okay, I get him at home, I get him against the Texans. That being said, does it give you pause at all that it's 2 teams coming off of a bye where it's kind of like, hey, look, maybe the Texans had 2 weeks to put together a game plan here to attack this Raiders squad that, again, is not been the greatest on both sides of the ball all season long. I get it, and I get the strategy, and maybe I would go there anyway, but I at least have a little bit of like pump the brakes in that one, strictly because it is a team coming off of a bye that maybe just is treating this as almost like a mini Super Bowl for them, because the Texans aren't by any stretch going to contend for anything this year. So, hey, look, why don't we give our best effort in a game where we had 2 weeks to prepare for it?
For sure. But I mean, I can understand, first of all, why people would pause and not want to take the Raiders after the Texans just beat the Jaguars 13-6. I mean, they were pretty lucky to do so, but the Raiders, we knew coming into this season, were one of the luckiest teams to make the playoff, probably the luckiest team to make the playoffs. And we're seeing regression this year. We're seeing poor coaching decisions, poor offensive play calling. They got up for that Chiefs game, but who's to say now at 1-4 if they're going to continue to get up, especially for a game against the Houston Texans. So I think there are enough options in week number 7 where I would, first of all, not want to make the Raiders my pick. And secondly, because if they are the most popular pick, and I am using game theory as we continue to preach all season long, then I don't want what I think is still not the safest pick, and it also happens to be the most popular. That's not the game theory combination we're going for here.
I guess my question is if we're really, okay, let's go back to this and just say, as bad as they have looked of late, if we are not playing any sort of long-term strategy, and if we are in a pool that has been decimated and there's only a handful of people left, no matter how bad they've looked, we're probably still playing the Bucs here, right? Like if we have them available.
Oh man. Like, yeah,
it's going to be Baker Mayfield. Like, it's like he was out of the walking boot, apparently. So it's like, it's going to be Baker Mayfield, who's been absolutely atrocious this year.
But like, and what even confidence though the Bucs, do you have in the Bucs at this point?
I don't. I mean, I don't. But I'm just saying, like, aren't we Isn't that as safe though as the Raiders against the Texans? I mean, if we're being honest, right? It's an 11 points favorite in a game with a total of 40. Right. I mean, it's a game with a total of 40 and it's an 11-point favorite. So, I mean, I get it. The Bucs have not inspired any confidence whatsoever for us so far, but it's going to be the Panthers that have just traded away Robbie Anderson. Apparently, who knows, by the time this game actually kicks off, maybe they've traded away another couple of pieces, right? Because they're apparently in fire sale mode. And we're also getting, Baker Mayfield, who's been arguably the worst quarterback in the NFL. Maybe him and Justin Fields could be in a competition for that, with like Carson Wentz maybe, but he's at least in the conversation as the worst quarterback in the NFL so far this year. And again, a team that is likely kind of going to be not whole. I don't know, man. Like, if I'm not playing any sort of long-term strategy, I might just unfortunately click the Bucs and just move on and assume that they can get it done against, what we all have rated as a bottom 3 team in all the NFL.
See, for me, the fact that it looks like they are going to be one of the 2 most popular teams this week, I don't want to click them, first of all, for that reason. And secondly...
Well, I'm talking about if you're in, say there's only 95 people left in your pool or whatever, or 55 or 35 or something like that. I think if I'm in a very shallow pool at this point, I'm probably just going to play chalk if available to me, because the way that the NFL season's been going... I think getting cute at this point, now you've pretty much set yourself, if you've made it to this point, you've pretty much set yourself up to just play chalk from here on out and probably do very well.
Even then, Matt, I understand the theory. It makes sense to me, but I see a list of options this week that is pretty deep that I think I'd have more confidence in than, I get it. On paper, the spread, the total, it all makes sense mathematically. But for whatever reason, the Bucs don't look right. And we talked about this last week. Adam warned us about it. We got hosed on our teasers. And if you look at the past 4 weeks, the Bucs lose to the Packers, only score 12 points. They look better offensively, but give up 41 points to the Chiefs. They barely beat the Falcons, could have easily lost that game. And then they lose the Steelers as a double-digit favorite. So I don't have a ton of confidence. I need to see the Bucs get back on track first before I feel confident picking them in a winner go home situation. So I'm going to stay away, considering that they're going to be one that even in a smaller pool with less entries left, I'm still going to try and take a less popular team this week.
I'm with you. Listen, so for me, the number one choice for me, if I'm in a bigger pool, if I'm playing long-term strategy, I think for me, easily New England Patriots. You get them against the Bears, arguably the worst team in the NFL. You're getting the Patriots at home against Justin Fields on a long-ish week, since it's on Monday night, to prepare, and Belichick with his defense to be able to shut down a team that has not been able to move or score all season long. I don't care who's playing quarterback for them. Hell, Bailey Zappi might end up being just as good as Mac Jones for all we know at the end of the day. And so for me, the number one pick of the week would be the Patriots.
I agree with you. That was my top pick as well. Among the 8 teams that we have on the money line with an implied win probability of at least 70% this week. That's what I'm talking about, with a large range of options for us to choose from this week numerically. And the Patriots are who stood out to me. This was 6 on the look ahead. It got up to 7.5. When it reopened, and now we're outside teaser zone here. So the Patriots continue to take money going into this game. You could argue that the Bears are pretty unlucky to lose that Thursday night game against Washington, to have 3 goal-to-go situations and come away with 0 points. That's crazy. But this Patriots team is just very fundamentally sound. They are blowing bad teams out. Their defense, led by Belichick, is strong. They're going to take away your best option every single week, and the Bears really only have one option in the passing game in Darnell Mooney. So on top of that, Justin Fields continues to hold the ball too long. He's taking terrible sacks. Pretty much all but a handful of his sacks this year have been his fault, because the line has blocked an adequate amount of time, and he's just making terrible decisions. So up against Bill Belichick, this feels really safe to me. And I'll tell you why. It's either them or the Bucs, or almost pass for me this week. I assume you have one of those 2 available, and if so, it would be one of those 2 for me, or pass, because I think there's warts on every one of these other plays except for Cincinnati. But I think Cincinnati at least has started to at least trend in the right direction, Steven. And so I would rather
hold on to them and have them in my pocket, as opposed to use them this week when I would have the option to play the Patriots. When am I going to feel confident in playing the Patriots again? Do I feel super confident in this Bucs squad at all moving forward? I mean, I can get them as a double-digit favorite against one of the worst 3 teams in the NFL. Like, those two seem fairly obvious to me. And so outside of that, Bengals, I want to hold on to. Cowboys with the Lions coming off of a bye. Steven, I know, bad defense for the Lions. We get it. But coming off of a bye, the offensive line should be healthy again, because let's remember they played the last 2 games without the offensive line being healthy. Amon-Ra St. Brown should be healthy for them. So we should see much more of the Lions that we saw in the first couple of weeks than we saw in the last couple of weeks. And so with that, I think that's a scary-ish game. I'll put it that way. I think there's too much risk in that game for me to want to play the Cowboys.
I agree with you, because we saw that the Lions are a totally different team when they have their top 2 weapons out there. So, and then you have Dak Prescott, his first game back.
Right. What if his hand doesn't work right? You know, like what if it doesn't work right?
So my understanding from talking to our injury expert, Will Carroll, is that his ability to throw the ball will be fine. He's already shown that. The reason they held him out last week is because of concerns about grip strength and fumbling. So another week to get a little bit stronger with his grip there to be able to hold the ball if he gets rushed or sacked. But the Lions don't have a defense. I don't think they're going to be able to pass rush him at all. And on the flip side, the Cowboys, if they can get some pressure, Jared Goff folds under pressure. He's done that his entire career. So it looks fine, but the Lions offense is just spunky enough where there's a little bit of uncertainty, considering the Patriots look like a slam dunk, where I'm not as interested in using the Cowboys this week, despite the fact that they are going to be less popular than those other teams that we talked about.
Well, Packers, no way in hell. I think Taylor Heineke is an upgrade at quarterback for Washington. And so Packers on the road at Washington, no way in hell, Steven. That would not even in consideration for me.
Are the Packers bad? I
mean, seriously. So there's that question to be asked. And actually, that question might get answered this week, right?
Yeah. I mean, they can't block. Their defense, there's been, analysis that's come out. I think Warren Sharp was one of them. ESPN Analytics has showed that the Packers are like one of the worst teams in the NFL on defense when they're facing play action. For whatever reason, they can't figure it out. They're fine normally, but if there's play action, they fold. So that was the case with the Jets last week. Man, aging offensive line, no weapons on the outside. The guy he threw 13 targets to, Randall Cobb, is now injured. So he went back to Bob Tunyon, giving him 10 targets. Like he's not trusting these young guys. He's going back to his old faithful guys who are below replacement level talents at this point. Yeah. They're not moving the ball. So no, it wouldn't shock me in the least if the Packers lose this week.
So Ravens, Browns, also an option. Ravens have been used by a lot of people already, so probably not available to a ton of you out there. But if they were available, Steven, the only thing that gives me pause here is this Browns team is a bully if they get ahead. Of course, they don't really have the capability to come from behind because they are a power running team. And I think we saw last week that when a team gets out to a big lead in front of them, Jacoby Brissett, as good as he was in those first few weeks from an advanced metric standpoint, like this offense just isn't really built to come from behind. And so that being said, the Ravens, should they fall behind early, I could see this Browns team just running them into oblivion, because we know Lamar, something's not right with Lamar. I don't know. Like, we heard this arm thing maybe is going on with him or whatever and all this, but like there's been a drastic decline in Lamar over the last 3 weeks. And so something ain't right with him. And there's just something about this Ravens team that doesn't instill a lot of confidence in me right now either. So Ravens, even though, again, like I said, probably not available to a lot of you out there anyway, but if you were considering them, I think this would be a pass this week as well.
A couple good spots to hold the Ravens. I think that the arrow is still pointing up for them. They are so close to being 6-0. It's ridiculous. I think there was a stat this week that I'll find it for you in a second here. They're like the first team in NFL history to not be above 500 with how often they've led through 6 weeks. It's crazy how unlucky they've been in the win-loss column. But in terms of their future schedule here for survivor purposes, they still have games against Carolina and Jacksonville in week 11 and 12. They still have a game against Pittsburgh. Denver doesn't look like a bad spot to use anymore. So I think there's just better options this week. But if you're in a pickle, then I wouldn't mind using Baltimore. I still think the arrow's pointing up for them. I still have faith in them, Matt.
Chargers at home against Seattle, 6.5-point favorites. No way for me yet again. I mean, look, I understand Seattle kind of came back down to earth, got exposed a little bit this past week. But Steven, for me, it is one of those things where I still have seen this offense go and kind of pummel some bad defenses. And I don't think we got an accurate depiction of this Chargers defense and just how much they've struggled this past week, because they got the fortunate kind of bye going against the Broncos offense, which has been the worst like in the entire NFL. I think Seattle can put up some points in this game. It's a total of 51.5, which means could be a high variance game as well. So I'd keep the Chargers in my pocket this week.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the Chargers are a team that, I want to hang on to as they get healthier to take advantage of. And Seattle,
they
just
still have no Keenan Allen,
where,
right? Yeah, they still have no Keenan Allen. So I mean, like, you haven't seen the best version of this team yet,
Yeah, totally. I think that this is a team that I want to hang on to if I can use them. This is a team that we thought was a top 5 team coming into the season before the injuries. And I think they're going to be pretty solid the rest of the way. And Seattle, man, like we talked about last week, you weren't as confident in Seattle here, but I think we're looking at a team that is not the bottom 5 team we thought they were coming into the year.
Mm-hmm. And then finally, it would be my number 3 choice of the week, and kind of reluctantly my number 3 choice of the week. The Dolphins at home as 7-point favorites over the Steelers. I think what we're getting here, Steven, is the combination of two things that has really would make this a good pick. We're getting the Steelers at their highest point in the market coming off of the upset, and the Dolphins at the lowest point in the market with the quarterback kind of shakiness. Seems like Tua's going to be able to go, but he sat out a couple of weeks. People probably a little bit nervous about that as well, considering the injury that he's coming off of. So I think if we had a healthy Tua and the Steelers had lost last week that they should have, we'd be looking at 9-10 in this game as opposed to 7. So I do think it's a pretty decent little buy low spot on the Dolphins. But for me, I just like I think the Patriots against the Bears is just a much safer choice. And so for that reason, and again, Tua coming off of this deal, there is still some risk involved, right? I mean, there is still some risk involved with Tua coming out the injury. So again, it's my number 3 choice of the week, but my reluctant number 3.
I agree. I think, with this new frontier concussion protocol that we're dealing with, where they are going to be watching him like a hawk, that even if he shows a little bit of not being able to have balance for whatever reason, we saw with Teddy Bridgewater. He didn't even have a concussion and he was ruled out for the rest of the game. So I think this is just a situation where there's a bit of uncertainty. So it doesn't get into my top 2, but I agree with you that it was like a perfect storm for Pittsburgh last week. I wasn't all that impressed with them winning that game. I still think they're a bad team. And I think when Tua is the quarterback of the Dolphins, they are an above average team. I think they're a top 15 team. So I'm not sure I'm going to lay the number, but in a survivor standpoint, I think given how popular some of these other teams are going to be, I think that's a good contrarian option.
Yep. So for me, guys, pretty simple. Patriots number 1 by a pretty long shot, actually, against this Bear squad that just really has struggled to do anything positively on the offensive side of the ball. Number 2, I would play, again, if I'm not in Circa or whatever, I like the Bucs, I think for me as 11-point favorites against the Panthers, who I consider to be just completely atrocious as a football team. And then third, and again, reluctant third, given the injury situation and all that stuff like that, but would be the Dolphins as 7-point home favorites here over the Steelers. Again, a healthy Tua and a Steelers team not coming off of this upset win would certainly be 9-10 point favorites or something in this game. Instead, it's sitting at 7. So I think we're getting a decent look here at a Dolphins team that might even be might be the second double-digit favorite on the week, given a couple of other circumstances. So, Steven, I think we did a pretty good job of laying out like just the warts on some of these other teams, right? Or the validity of holding on to a couple of other teams, like specifically the Chargers and the Bengals, they seem to kind of be on the upward trajectory, and that would give you value in holding on to them for a little bit longer and gives you more versatility to play them maybe against some tougher matchups down the line if you need to. So I think that I think that's kind of the way I would go this week. And again, the only two that are wipe off the face of the planet for me, for sure. No way in hell am I playing the Packers against Washington. Just zero chance I would ever go that direction. And then again, there's just enough. I've seen just enough from that Lions offense and just enough question marks around Dak Prescott and everything that's going on there. I'll live to fight another day with the Cowboys. I'll hold on to them. I'll live to fight another day. But that Lions team, when the offense was fully healthy in those first couple of weeks, now they were still losing games, but they were putting a lot of points on the board. And if this Cowboys team comes out and lets them score a lot, I don't know if Dak and all them are going to be able to go shot for shot with them. So those are the only two that just I wiped off the face of the planet for this week.
For sure. My top three, and with the given that I am immediately crossing off the two most popular picks as I've tried to do for most of this season. So taking the Raiders out of consideration, taking the Bucs out of consideration because of how projected popularity they are right now. So Patriots, easy number one for me this week. And I'm not sure I'm going to consider anything else. I'm not sure I even want to give people a top three, but in the unlikely event that you have actually already used the Patriots this week, then I would probably then go Cowboys. It is the Lions. I don't feel great. You can hear it in my voice. I'm not all that confident. I take it back, actually. I think I would go Chargers over Seattle. I'm fine with the Chargers at this point. I know they didn't look good against the Broncos defense, but this is different with Seattle. And I know the defense for Seattle looked a little bit better against Arizona, but that Arizona offense is broken. They are so broken, they can't figure it out. And Seattle has given up a ton of points to other opponents this year. And I have faith that Justin Herbert and Mike Williams and maybe Keenan Allen comes back this week with Austin Eckler, that they'll be fine against Seattle. So Patriots number one, Chargers number two, and then reluctantly probably the Ravens or the Cowboys after that.
Interesting. No Dolphins, huh? Interesting. All
no,
right, well.
I'm just that situation. Listen, if on paper I get it, but the fact that the bar for Tua being removed from the game is so low that he doesn't even need to show concussion symptoms again for him to be removed from the game scares me. It does.
I got you. That's fine. Listen, hey, I'm not gonna argue with you here. I'm just saying it's an interesting. I just think we're getting a discount basically on the Dolphins, where they would be like they'd be double digit favorites in this game. Yeah. And then it's like, so might as well go there. But guys, it's a lot of options this week, but I do think this is where strategy does come into play. A couple of teams on the upward trajectory in the Bengals and Chargers, and Chargers again, still don't even have Keenan Allen, right? I mean, like you're going to get a much better version of this team down the line here. And so, and again, Texans coming off of a bye. That's a little froggy. I'm just saying. The Raiders, it's a little froggy for me.
They got a couple dudes.
I would go in that direction. Guys, as always, everything we do, absolutely free. So please go ahead, hit that subscribe button. We do an awesome mega pod every single week where we break down every single one of the NFL games. You'll want to come and listen. Hey, forget about 2 weeks ago. Think about last week where we won every damn thing that we bet last week. So just wipe 2 weeks ago off your mind.
Where the book had the most profitable week of the year. We were profitable. We
won every damn thing. Yeah. We won every damn thing last week. And so, we'll try to keep that rolling this week as well. Basketball is starting up, as you know, so NBA pods are coming, NBA videos are coming, so you want to be a part of that, and you get all this in the Discord when college basketball gets going as well. We're going to have a very active college basketball Discord to go along, so join in that with everything as well. You want to follow Steven at Steven Anderson1. You want to follow me at Matt Brown M2, and as always, good luck on your Week 7 Survivor pick.